Hi everyone. Sorry about that, bit of a technical glitch there, in that I was on the wrong Wi-Fi. So good morning everybody, it's Michelle Carville here doing the Q&A live today, our live over on Social Souls. I hope I'm live. I've got my laptop down here, so because I'm on here, normally I do this through another piece of kit and I can't see on that who's in, so I'm just going to be looking down here just to check I'm still here, that we are actually live. So yeah, okay, I think we're live. Is there anybody on? Can you send me? Hey Kelly, thank you. Okay, Lila, good. So you can see me. This is a good thing. Good morning Lila, good morning Kelly, good morning Shelley. Okay, good, some people are coming on. Sorry about that bit of a glitch. I was on the wrong network, schoolgirl error, and I was like, why is it glitching? So thank you for joining me today. It's quite nice to do the lives myself and to do a bit of a teach today, and this is very much around I recently, I've recently written a book. I'm going to keep talking about it, and this week's been so exciting because I've actually had to put the book out to people to read, to get endorsements and feedback, and it was quite nerve-wracking actually, because I was, whilst I've reread the book and I think it's quite good, when you put it into the hands of real CEOs and real leaders and people who, know this stuff, but are out there doing the doing, to say, what do you think? And they come back and they say, it's bloody brilliant. I've learned so much. It's like, phew. So that's been really exciting. And because of that, I've been getting, thank you, Kelly. I know, it's like, woo, relief. And so because of that, I've been getting a lot of my other content ready for the launch of that book. This week, I put together a little site, michellecarville.com, so you can hop over there and have a look at that. It's nowhere near finished, but it's just getting started, a bit of my branding. And I have also started putting content together for the Get Social site. And on the Carville site, 2 bits of content that we had that people could freely download was a social media planning guide and a marketing plan. And both of those were done probably in 2013. And whilst they're still kind of robust as a top-line planner, it was necessary for me to update them, both of them. So they're now updated. And when I put that into the Social Souls and said, who would like this, a lot of people, or quite a few people, came back and said, oh, me please, me please, me please. So I thought a session on social media planning, the way I go about social media planning with people, would be quite useful. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the strategy, and I hope that's okay with everybody. And we've got 30 minutes together, so I'm not going to go into granular detail, but I am going to work through the model, the overriding model that I've used for years. And as a strategic marketeer, and having worked with a lot of professional services businesses, particularly in the past, it's been very important to start with strategy. Hi Anne, hope you're feeling better, lovely. Good to see you on here. So that's always been my focus, and we're going to talk about that model. I call it my smart social focus model. It didn't have a name until very recently. I just always used the term plan, listen, analyze, engage, measure. But I've decided to brand it, and thanks to the lovely Alison Porter, she just kind of helped me come up with that, and I really like it, and it's really sitting very comfortably. So we're going to talk through my smart social focus model, and then what we're going to have a look at is a bit of practical. So I get asked a question a lot, and I know when I had Vinny on doing a live, he also said, he gets asked these questions. How many tweets should I do a day? How many Instagram things should I do on a daily basis? And it really does depend. It depends on what you're setting out to achieve, and it depends on what you need to do, and who you are and those objectives. And So that's where we're going to start. We're going to start because if you get your planning right, and if you get the strategy right, and you understand who it is that you need to target, then that pretty much aligns everything else, and that's where most of the trouble starts. So we're going to talk strategy and planning, then we're going to move into a little bit of practical. And I'm not going to tell a lie, there's a matrix back here that we're going to work through. We work on a very similar basic matrix at Made Simple, at Carvel Creative, and when I was working at Made Simple, that's we used a similar matrix, and it's not, this one I'm going to show you is probably not as detailed as we would go into, because we tend to look at things and say, well, let's put the content plan together. What are the objectives that you're trying to achieve for this quarter? And now let's map those out quarterly. And what I'm going to look at is really a kind of top line on a weekly basis. If you were to say, okay, so how do I map out my content week by week? This is kind of the only bit we're going to be looking at today from a practical perspective. But hopefully it gives you some ideas. And I went to an event, and Dan Meredith, who runs a couple of groups, and he's quite a well thought of digital marketeer, and he gave some kind of guidelines as to how much really people should be using. It kind of, whilst I definitely don't want to be prescriptive and say you must be doing this, you must be doing that, it's certainly, the numbers that he talked about certainly kind of sit with the types of levels that we find ourselves as a social media marketing team on behalf of our clients, managing their social. We find a similar kind of rhythm. Those rhythms, and we'll talk about finding your own rhythm. Those rhythms will be different for different businesses, for different objectives. But when he talked about these particular numbers, which I'll share with you when we get to the practical bit, I did think, that kind of sits quite comfortably with, if I had to put it down on paper, those are kind of the rough guidelines. So without further ado, I have created some whiteboards back here. I've flipped the screen, so you should be able to see my writing. So we have welcome social solars, welcome social solars. And as we're going through, I've got, I can see questions. I've got my Mac down there as well, so I can see what's going on there. So if you've got questions as we're going through, just type them out, and I'll make sure that I capture them as we're going through. So great. So welcome to the session. Great to have those of you that are live here with us on the session. And let's get started. So I want to start with, I'm just going to pull this across. Oh no, you can see it. You can see it quite nicely. Okay, so my model, my Smart Social Focus model, is plan, listen, analyze, engage, measure. And in my experience, when I speak to most organizations, and actually I was at an event yesterday, and it was a networking event for women around International Women's Day, so happy International Women's Day to everybody for yesterday. And it was very evident to me that lots of people are still just diving in and engaging. Okay, so this, even though this for me on my model is step 4 of the process, if we think about these as steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then engage is step 4. It's not the first thing you do. You don't just dive in and get started. But that is what a lot of people still do. I'll set up Twitter, I'll set up Facebook, I'll set up Instagram and Snapchat, whatever, whichever channels they think are relevant to them. And I'm just going to get out there. I'm just going to start posting stuff. And, for some people, they may get some wins that way. They may. But it's not smart. It's not focused. And you can burn a lot of energy and you can burn a lot of effort by just not being targeted. So, with my marketing roots and very grounded in marketing, if I was endeavoring on any other practice, any other marketing activity, whether it was a campaign, whether it was a promotion, whether it was a product launch, whatever it was, I would be setting out with the first question: well, what are we looking to achieve? What is it that I am looking to achieve? And, you know, people that have seen me speak before and those that work with me, you know, I love the statement by Zig Ziglar: those that aim for nothing hit it with remarkable accuracy. And that is so true when it comes to planning. Okay, so if we don't plan, we're setting ourselves up for a fall. How do we know where you know we want to head if we haven't actually, you know, plugged anything in and thought about it? It's kind of like a sat nav. You know, if you think about it like an analogy to a sat nav, if you just get in your car and hope that you're going to find the address, you know, and meander around a little bit, and, you know, go down one road and go down another road and another road and another road and just hope that you get there? Or do you say, that's where we need to go, let me figure out the postcode, let me pop that in, okay, now I've got a direction, now I've got a steer. So that is really where my model starts. It starts with the planning, not the engaging. It's going back to planning. So we start and we plan. And that's the first thing. Get really clear on what it is that you're looking to achieve. Who it is that you're looking to talk to, who's important, you know. So for example, one of the examples I always used when I was training, you know, if I was a dog groomer and I'm based in Maidenhead, let's say, and, you know, therefore, what am I trying to achieve? Well, I'm trying to achieve new clients. I want more clients. I want people to know about me, and therefore I want business, you know. So I need brand awareness. I need people to understand what it is that I do. I need to find new customers, and that's pretty much, those are my key objectives. I want to set up this business. I want customers and I want revenue. And that, for most businesses, regardless of what it is that you do, is largely most of the key focus. It's largely around, I want customers, and I am keen to get new customers, and I'm looking. And I'm looking for you know, customers and to drive revenue. So if that's the case, then if I am planning, what do I want to achieve? Those are the things I want to achieve. It kind of it gives you the idea immediately as, okay, well, who's my target audience? Okay, if I'm a dog groomer, people with dogs. Okay, so people with dogs. Well, that might be big. Who else? Who else might be influential in that space? Well, if I'm looking for referrers, then who else is going to help me find people with dogs? Where do people with dogs hang out? Where do they go? Who do they listen to? Who are they influenced by? Well, people with dogs might be influenced by what their vets are saying. They might be influenced by what somebody, you know, who is a pet nutritionist is saying. So it's a case of, okay, so therefore now I need to figure out who my audience is, who the influencers are, and how do I now start to connect with those people? Where are they? What are they doing? Where are they hanging out? And that comes back to the research piece. So my listen piece. So, you know, planning, yeah, that's what I want to do. Strategically, that's what I want to achieve. I've got very clear objectives. I'm a dog groomer. I'm based in Maidenhead. I'm probably going to look for local business. So therefore, the people that are going to be influential are local vets, local pet nutritionists, local dog owners, local dog shows, local dog accessory places. You know, there's going to be, when you start thinking about it, there's going to be a lot of influencers, and there's potentially, you know, one key audience. There might be more than that, but there are going to be influencers. And then the piece is, okay, so where do these people hang out? This is the research, okay? So again, going back to my grounded marketing roots, you start with objective, and then you go out and you figure out what's going on in the world. And sometimes what's going on in the world and what's going on in the space might actually steer back to some of your objectives. It might help you with the planning. In fact, it's highly likely to help you with the planning. So you go out and you listen to what is going on. Now, the beauty of social media channels is that you can do a lot of listening without actually doing anything. So you can have a Twitter channel, you can tune into people privately, so you can create anonymous private lists on Twitter so that you can tune into people and people don't even know you're listening to them, and you can start watching what is going on with your competitors, with your potential audience before you reach out to them, with potential influencers to see, well, what do they engage with, what ignites them, what do they really like to tap into. And then with that body of knowledge, and you do have to put the work in, you do have to put the work in. You don't just dive in and engage and expect it all to happen. You might get lucky, but probably not. And, but with the planning and then with the research, you are far more likely to be informed. So you've got your objectives, you've been out and you've done some listening. And then it's kind of, well, the analysis piece is, well, what do I do with all of that now? What have I learned? What have I learned? And how does that actually inform my planning? So these first 3 steps, the planning, hey Emma, good to see you. The planning, the listening, the analysis, this is what informs how you're going to engage. So when I am talking to people and they are saying to me, well, I've jumped onto the channels and I'm on Twitter, I'm on this and that, it's just not working, I'm just not getting traction, I'm not getting engagement, I don't understand, my followers aren't going up, it's just going nowhere, nobody's seeing my content, and my content's really brilliant. Can you imagine? If you're spending so much time on your content and you're creating fantastic content and you're putting it out, but it's like a billboard in the desert, because actually the people that you haven't done the planning, the listening and the analysis to actually drive what is going to happen with engagement. So the engaging bit is kind of twofold. You've got to understand what it is you want to achieve, where those people are hanging out and what they're doing, and how best to influence them, engage with them. And then, really map that out and understand what it is you're going to do before you dive in. So a lot of people just dive in, they get going without planning, listening, analyzing and engaging. And so when I ask you the question, so what is, if you're on Twitter, send me some thumbs up if anybody is on Twitter. Okay? Right, some thumbs are coming across the screen. So you're on Twitter. If I'm to ask you, so what is your strategy for Twitter? Is that nailed? Have you got a plan for Twitter? What's your strategy on Instagram? What's your strategy on Facebook? What's your strategy on LinkedIn? Now, your strategy on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram may be very different, because the types of people that are on those audiences and the way that people utilize those channels is very different. What you can't do is go on and just start sharing the content manically across all channels. You can have a go and you may get some traction and you might strike lucky, but really the smart and focused way of working with each of these with each of these networks is in a very different way. For example, on LinkedIn, you might be focused on thought leadership. LinkedIn is the platform. It's my B2B channel. It's where I'm going to go on and I'm going to do much more thought leadership pieces. I'm going to do thought leadership pieces that really help me to focus or really help people to understand the value that I bring. So I'm not going to be chatty. I'm not going to do, necessarily Facebook lives and or live kind of, what I call, the teachy bits, which is a bit more street about the practicalities. I want to be more thought leadership. I want to, I want to be read. I want to be heard in a different way than maybe on Facebook. So there might be two very different audiences. And for me, my own experience, my own strategies are very different. On LinkedIn, for me, LinkedIn is all about the leadership piece. It's all about showcasing helping leaders to get social, leaders and organizations, and that is my main focus. It's more corporate, therefore the way I position my content is a bit more corporate. Now, you may say, "Oh, Michelle, I've seen you sharing lives and some this and this." Yes, I do, but I've trimmed things down. I've reframed the words. It's different. It's positioned very differently. And I'll blog and I'll put stuff onto the LinkedIn Pulse on LinkedIn that I may not put onto the Carvel page, and I may not share on, I certainly probably wouldn't share some of the stuff on Facebook because it's just not relevant. So those, you've got to think about where your audiences are, and that you're going to understand when you've done the research and the listening. Similarly with Twitter, Twitter I use my Twitter strategy is very much about connection. I use Twitter to connect with influencers and to listen, to really tune in and figure out what is going on in a space. It is a brilliant tool for listening, and therefore, I may not tweet manically, but I will be tweeting and sharing stuff that influencers who I am very keen to get in front of are talking about, so that I show up in their feeds and I've got a voice in their content. So there is a very different tactic and strategy going on just on those two platforms. And of course in Facebook I'm doing something totally different. It's much more me as a as a marketeer interested in helping people to learn about social media, but also making sure that I've got people I can turn to and say, "Hey, how are you doing on that? What have you noticed about the Instagram changes? What have you done, this, that, and the other?" I can question, I can inquire. So my strategy and tactics are very, very different. And yours probably should be too. So if you think you've just got one blanket and it's like, "Hey, that image is going out on there, and there, and I'm not repositioning it and I'm not reframing it for the different types of way that content is going to be consumed by the different audiences that are on those channels," that isn't smart and it isn't focused. And in many cases it can just look, it can be detrimental. So plan, listen, analyze, and engage. Before you engage, you're engaging, the channels that you use and the content that you create and the frequency of your activity is all going to be down to the plan. Who it is, your objective, what is it you're trying to achieve will determine how you engage. So I really encourage you to do some thinking about what it is you want to achieve, understanding how those channels are being used by these audiences. Are your audiences even on some of these channels? And if they're not, then if you've got a very clear focus and a very clear purpose, then maybe you don't need to be on those channels either. So make sure that you are, it's pointless me being on Snapchat right now, not maybe forever, but right now. I like some of the filters, but other than that, growing my audience, that is not my audience. I'm not going to find my C-suite leaders in Snapchat, so I don't play in Snapchat right now. That may change, who knows? Another channel may come along and that might be even more relevant for things that I want to do. But I'm going to play where it makes sense, where it's smart and where it's focused. So plan, listen, analyze before you engage. Don't just dive in and engage. Think about, if I think about me sitting next to you and saying, "What's your strategy for that? What's your strategy for that? And what's your strategy for that? Why are you spending time on these channels?" And if you can't justify it to yourself, then it either means you haven't done the planning, the listening and the analysis, and you need to go back and do that, or maybe you're on the channels that you don't need to be on, and you're spending energy doing stuff that you don't need to be doing because it isn't smart, it isn't focused. So plan, listen, analyze before you engage, and then fundamentally measure, understand what's working. There is no one size fits all. Everybody's strategy is going to be different. Yes, we can learn some things that are general, but you've got to understand this stuff yourself. What are people engaging with? How are they engaging with it? when are they engaging with it? You know, there's deep analytics now. You can look at the time of day that your content is being consumed. What are they doing? Are they just watching the first 30 seconds of a 3-minute video? What is that telling you? You know, is that telling you to maybe shorten up the content so that on that particular channel that you're on, that's what works? We know that content works differently across channels. You know, some people, we know on LinkedIn, people will consume longer form video. We know on Instagram, that's not the case because that's not what the platform's designed for. So you know already you've got to change the dynamics of that content for the different ways that that's consumed. So think about your audiences. And that is the question you know, my challenge for you today is, what's your strategy for Twitter? What's your strategy? For any channel you're on, ask yourself, well, what's my strategy? What am I looking to achieve? And where does this fit, you know, into my bigger plan? And if you can't justify those, really do some listening and analysis to get that clear. And if you still can't justify it to yourself, then you've got a question as to, well, why am I even spending time on that channel? Just because everybody else is? If it's not smart and focused for what you're looking to achieve, don't do it. And so that is my smart social focus model. Hopefully that makes sense. Plan, listen, analyze before you engage, because the planning, the listening, the analysis determines what it is you do and how you actually engage. And of course, measure, keep watching. And this isn't static, by the way. You know, in my book, I used to write this as a line. It used to be a very step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. And, you know, and actually I've turned this into more of a kind of star shape because it is dynamic. It keeps moving. You're constantly learning about, okay, so how are they doing things? That is going to determine your objectives and maybe, you know, steer things a little bit different to you and certainly impact how you're going to engage. So it's continuous. It's a continuous process. You continuously have to keep really focused and really smart on what it is that you're looking to achieve and how you're going to do that. So the next bit I want to talk about is I got questions about, you know, how many times, what should we be doing on social and what could we be doing? I'm just going to move the camera a little bit this way. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so everybody's still with me. I'm just checking. So Emma, you're saying you don't have a strategy. Well, you know what you've got to go do, girl. You've got to go get that strategy and do the thinking. Where's your audience? Where are they playing? Get out onto the channels, do some research. Hey Ron, nice to see you. Alison, I gave you a big shout out earlier with big thanks for helping me come up with my smart social focus brand. Yeah, Miriam, hey Miriam, good to see you. And good. So Emma, good, you've got strategies for Facebook and LinkedIn. Yeah, good stuff. So you know, you've got to have that clarity. What am I looking to achieve? Who am I going for? What's my message? That steers the content of everything that you do. Where are my influencers? How do I reach them? What are they engaging with? What ticks their boxes, and how do I get, you know, my stuff to be ticking those boxes too, so they help me to amplify my reach into their relevant audiences. So the next little bit that I just wanted to cover for a bit of practical, so we've looked at the strategy, a bit of practical, because we do get asked quite a bit about the practical side of things. And I mentioned on the content live that I did with David, and I think we talked about it when I did the live with Vinny, so you can always jump back and look at those videos. They're in the videos section of Social Souls. You know, we look at, well, what happens in your world January to December, and we map out quarter by quarter all the different activities, all the things that are going to be relevant, and then we start to plan with our clients on a quarterly basis as to what the best ways of using their content is going to be. And sorry, the lighting in here, I've got a really big light, but it's either making me look like a ghost, so I'm going to have to change it. But anyway, and what we're talking about, yes, the planning. So content planning, we talked about January to February. On a kind of practical day to day, week to week, what do you plan? How do you plan your social media content particularly? This is something that we get asked. As I said, there's no kind of one-way prescription, but I really like this little model that I saw from Dan Meredith, so I thought I'd share this with you. So this is a very simple matrix. It's got 4 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's call them A, B, C, D, okay? And we've got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I'm going to call this Dan's ABC model, okay? I don't know what he calls it, but just for ease, I'm going to call it Dan's ABC model. And it was Dan Meredith, in case anybody wants to look him up. But so what Dan was talking about is that, you know, if we think about the content that we want to share and we simply map it out as A, B, C and D, different types of content. So A is going to be live video. B is going to be maybe a written piece with an image, maybe a blog or something that you've done, which is probably on brand, maybe a picture of a product with a bit of thing, an event you've been at, whatever. Then C could be a meme or a quote, and D could be, it should be something a bit personal, curated. Now, the way we always talk about content and not just content but activity on social within Carvel Creative for our clients is that 85% of the time should be listening in and actually listening in and finding relevant conversations and responding. So in our world, it's far better to respond to somebody than to push stuff at them, and especially on social, because if you think about a conversation, if you're at a networking event, and we are talking about social networks, if you're at a networking event and you know all you do at that networking event is just run up to people with your business card and start saying, hey, have this, have this, have that, have that, have that, I'm Michelle, have this, have this, have this, okay? People are going to think, oh my God, you know, who is that woman? She's mental, and probably don't want anything to do with you. Whereas if you go to that networking event and you and you're natural and you say, oh, hi, yeah, what is it you do? Oh, that's interesting. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, fine. Oh, I do, blah, blah, blah. And you talk and you engage and you have a conversation and people get to know you, to like you, to trust you. You know, you're building a relationship within these social networks. Then you are much more open for having a two-way conversation, and that is really where social comes into itself. If you are just constantly on the channel, pushing messages, push, with no engagement, with no listening, with no going back and saying, oh, that was interesting what you said, that I've had that issue too. This is how I found a solution. You know, you found yourself to be useful and helpful, then that is where real engagement and relationships start to be formed. And it doesn't matter whether you're ever going to see this person again, you have grown a little piece of loyalty in their mind because you've given them something that is relevant. So in our world, we are always keen or keener to not just be pushing out content for the sake of pushing out content, but it's very important to be out there listening to what is going on in the space and responding, or seeing somebody, you know, that's done a beautiful piece. You know, we have a photography client. If we see somebody's done a beautiful image, whether that image is part of, you know, the library of our client, doesn't matter. We will say, wow, that's amazing. You know, how beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And we may share that too. And, you know, that builds, you know, we haven't gone out there just pushing photographs out. We're out there looking and seeking and searching. So that is, you know, a big part of the listening piece. So if you think about your social activity and people say, I don't know what to do, I don't know where to get all the content from, I don't know. Start listening. Go out there, start listening, see the conversations that are out there that are happening. Go out there and engage with people. And, you know, it's way better to respond than push. And so where you can respond, where you can add value, where you can actually be building a real connection through an authentic conversation, do that. Do that, and then come in with, maybe once you've got that relationship, you can actually start to, you know, share a little bit more about what you do. But at least start by listening. So listening for me is the most important thing. So once you have listened and you've done your activity, and then you want to think about, you know, this kind of model, how you map it out. Sure, you need to be sharing content. Yes, you need to be engaging with people, but it can't just be broadcast. You know, these are not traditional marketing channels. Traditional marketing channels, TV, push it out there. Nobody was engaging. You just push it. It's very linear. It's very one way. Social channels are two way. And in many ways, they are many way. You know, it's not just one to one, it's one to many and many back to one, and sometimes many to many. You know, so they are complex and networked conversations. So don't treat them as just big broadcast channels. Yes, there's a place for broadcast, and that's why advertisements on the channels exist. So what you want to do is really give something and earn attention by doing something. So with that in mind, thinking about the types of content, live video, sure, you know, but think about what you're doing in your live video. Written images, branded blogs, you know, could be anything. And then a quote that may be inspirational or interesting or funny, you know, or brand related, no problem. And then this curated personal, you know, you found something of somebody else's and you're sharing it because it fits and it's great. So these are the types of things that you could be doing. And you might be thinking, well, how do I split this up? So, you know, what Dan was saying is, okay, you do it really quite simply. You say, okay, so on a Monday, I'm going to share a live video, a written image, and then a quote, and then something curated and personal in that order. And you could split this up in, you know, this is early morning, mid-morning, lunchtime, tea time, or it might be, depending on where you're, you know, you've done your listening and you realise that, you know, most of your analysis is telling you that most of your audience are more out there on a specific channel in the evening. Well, then this is gonna change depending on what your audience are doing. So hence why you've got to know that stuff. You've got to know where they are. You've got to be relevant where they are at relevant times with relevant content. So his model is, you know, A, B, C, D, and then of course the next day you might do, okay, well now I'm going to do the written image there, I'm going to do the curated piece there, I'm going to do another curated piece because I've found something else, and then I'm going to do a mem and a quote, you know, to end the day or whatever. And you can just play around with this as it works for you. And, you know, it could give you a structure. You might start to see some patterns that are working. This is what he was suggesting, you know, that you do this for a month and you start to see what's working, and you know, and you work things around that way. Now, you know, we work in a similar way with our clients. It's not quite as prescriptive as this, but it is quite similar. There, you know, it is quite similar, and so that's why I thought that was quite a nice, simple, practical tool to share with you, because, you know, sharing with you the sheets that we're using might just, you know, not be relevant. And the other question that we get asked is about, well, you know, how much content should I be sharing? And, you know, on this at this event that where I saw Dan, he was talking about, you know, well, on Facebook you might share, so on Twitter you might share something 3 to 5 times a day, you know, and that's not unusual because I might share a couple of tweets. It's not, but I'm definitely not doing is saying, ooh, Carvel Creative, ooh, Social Souls, ooh, my book, ooh, this, you know, I'm not. I'm talking about stuff I might do 1 or 2 of those, but I'm definitely talking about stuff that's going on in the space that I'm interested with, or I'm retweeting things that influencers have said because I want to, you know, I want to build relationships with them and I want them to know that I really enjoy their content enough to share it into my audience. So, then on Instagram, you might be sharing just 1 post a day. You know, sometimes it's 1 to 3, you know, some people suggest that. Of course, with all these algorithm changes, people have been testing. We're still testing. And there's a nice bit of research going on in Social Souls around, well, what's working and how many hashtags are working. What I would say, and I don't know if you caught the clip from Sarah Sangster yesterday, but, you know, I think we all know Instagram stories are growing, and And so on Instagram, you know, I would, and Dan said, I always thought about, you know, if you can do 60 seconds a day on live stories, it's not a lot, you know, just like 6 things for 10 seconds or 5 things, you know, or 4 things for 15 seconds, just depending on, you know, what it is that you're doing, and just build it into your day. Now, sometimes if you're at an event, or if you're running an event, or you've got you're doing a training or whatever, there might be 25 things. You know, I don't think there is any way of overcooking a story, but they're quite new, so we're still yet to learn. But of course, you want to keep it. You don't want to become annoying, and so maybe 60 seconds a day is a good benchmark for stories. And then, you know, on maybe a LinkedIn Pulse, if you're doing something like that, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, sometimes once a month. Sometimes I've found that when I've pulled back from my LinkedIn activity, and when I then do post, I get more engagement. And I think they're playing around with the algorithms on LinkedIn as well, quietly, because engagement certainly seems to have shifted there. I know David Taylor was talking about that. So, you know, there is no one way. You've got to go out there and you've got to do the listening. And it is a little bit, you know, I always liken it to a bit of a plane taking off. Yes, there's effort when you start off. You know, most of the fuel is expended at takeoff, and you know, all of that kind of effort that you have to put in. But then once you've learned the stuff, once you've done the planning, the listening, the analysis, that engagement piece can become a lot smoother. And the more you iterate it and the more you learn, the smoother and smoother that becomes. So, you know, like anything, there is a little bit of science to it. You know, what that science is, what that formula is, you know, isn't specific to any individual campaign. But you know, by doing your own listening, by learning, then you'll start to understand. And that's what we've learned over the years. You know, at Carvel, we've worked with clients for nearly 10 years now, helping them with social. And of course, things change all the time. The platforms change all the time. So you've learned one thing and you think, oh, you know, but you know, you're constantly learning and evolving. And that's what I love about Social Souls, you know, because nobody knows everything. And it's great to ask questions. So if you've got any questions, I don't think we've got any more questions here today, but anybody watching it in the playback, if you've got questions, just pop them into the comments and I promise to get back to them. And I'm sure other people will jump in as well. I hope you found that a little bit useful. And you know, the Smart Social Focus model, it's not rocket science. It's kind of basic, good marketing practice. Plan, listen, analyze before you dive in and engage. You know, don't just jump into the channels blindly thinking, well, oh, I'm on here, well, what am I doing? You know, and that is absolutely, and still to this day, when I started training in social about 8 years ago, that was the common thing. Oh, we joined social because everybody's on it. Okay, well, what's your strategy? You've got all those icons on your website telling everybody that that's what you do. Well, what do you do and why are you doing them? And what are they achieving? You know, and what do you want them to achieve for you? And, you know, most people would say, oh, I never looked at it like that. But you're going to, you know, in many cases, you're going to outsource this. You're going to employ somebody to do this for you, or you're going to spend quite a lot of your own time investing into doing this stuff. And you haven't got a plan. You know, that's nuts. So plan, listen, analyze before you engage. Keep measuring, keep learning, and keep iterating. And that's it. So any questions, guys, jump on to the comments. I'm very, very happy. I hope you've all enjoyed it. I hope you've had a good weekend. I've gone about 5 minutes over. I did say this was a 45-minute session, but me, you know, I could stay on all day talking about this stuff. So have a great weekend. Get active in Social Souls. Ask questions. Thank you so much for being part of it. I want this group to really grow. I want this group to be a really fantastic and busy hive of questions. So if you've got people who you know that get stuck with this stuff, or they don't get stuck with this stuff, they know this stuff and you think they'd be interested to come in and do a live and share their knowledge, or just be part of the Social Souls team to help and ask questions, then get them involved. Get them involved. Please feel free to share and invite your friends into the group, because the more the merrier. The more questions, the better, because the more questions we have, the smarter we all get. So, and there are no stupid questions. There genuinely are no stupid questions. So ask those questions at any time. This is a safe place. So great. Thank you very much for tuning in. Hey, Caroline. So thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Alison. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Lila. And I think that's it for today. So my thanks, and I will see you all. Now, next week, next Friday, we've got Vicky from Incipio Group. Vicky worked at Covel and still does work, does do a little bit with us occasionally, from a kind of assisting us with her knowledge, etc. So she is going to be in on the group on Friday, whatever Friday that is. That's Friday the 16th. And Vicky's going to talk about what they did with their pop-up startup restaurants, Pergola on the Roof on the BBC at White City, and indeed in Paddington Basin. And they've got lots of other kind of experimental restaurants, and this pop-up kind of festival thing that's going on in streets and all sorts of things. So it's a really interesting group and a really interesting business. And she's going to talk about social from a highly practical perspective. So hearts to everybody. Have a great weekend. Thank you for tuning in. Invite your friends into Social Souls. The more, the better. Bye for now, and I'll see you next week, if not before. Take care. Bye.